No one came to my graduation, not a single familiar face in the crowd. When my name echoed through the speakers, the seats marked "reserved for family" stayed empty, the sunlight flashing off their cold metal frames. I smiled for the photos anyway, pretending it did not hurt. 3 days later, a text from my mom appeared. "Need 200 for your sister's Sweet 16. No congratulations, just a demand. I sent back one with a note, "Congrats." Then I changed the locks. For the first time, my apartment was silent and it belonged fully to me. Graduation day was supposed to be the moment I finally felt seen. The stadium shimmered in May sunlight, a blur of navy gowns and proud families waving their phones. When they called Camilla Elaine Reed, Master of Data Analytics, I glanced toward the front rows. The family section stared back, empty metal seats glowing under the heat. I forced a smile for the picture, holding the diploma a little too tightly. Around me, laughter burst like confetti. Students hugged their parents. Friends wiped tears into bouquets. I stood beside a stranger's family, my smile shrinking as their camera clicked. After the ceremony, I wandered the courtyard, scrolling my phone just to look occupied. My classmate Ruby found me and squealed, "You did it!" Her parents snapped photos of us beaming. She looked around. "Where is your family?" "Running late," I lied easily. I had years of practice. By the time I reached the parking lot, the sky was turning gold. Balloons floated above car roofs, kids shouted, horns honked. I sat inside my old Civic, watching everything from behind the wheel. For a moment, I imagined them walking toward me. Mom waving Avery in glitter sneakers, Dad holding flowers. Then the picture dissolved under the sound of engines starting. The truth is, I should not have been surprised. They skipped my college graduation too. Mom said Avery had finals. Dad did not even call. There was always something more important. I spent my teen years trying to earn love like it was a scholarship, working 2 jobs, sending money home, saying yes every time they asked. When I was 16, I wore a Starbucks apron at dawn, serving coffee to lawyers and nurses. Mom used to text, "Thanks, honey, Avery needs piano lessons," or "She has a field trip, just a little extra," and I always sent it. The first time she said, "You are our pride," I believed her. I thought love sounded like appreciation. Later I learned it sounded like obligation. When I got into grad school, I convinced myself the degree would change everything, that maybe she would finally see me, not as a backup plan or a wallet disguised as a daughter, but as someone equal. I did not know success could be twisted into another reason for her to take. 3 days after the ceremony, the cap and gown still hanging by the door, her message came, "Need 200 for your sister's Sweet 16. No pride, no how did it go, just numbers and expectation. And that was the moment something inside me, small, tired, and ignored, finally stood up. The next morning, the apartment was filled with quiet sunlight. I made coffee and tried to settle into job applications, but something kept tugging at me. I opened my banking app, and my stomach dropped. 2 new credit inquiries blinked on the screen, Capital One and Discover, both filed recently. None of them mine. I checked my credit report and froze. 2 accounts had been opened under my name, but using my parents' address in Littleton. The balances were already rising fast. Thousands spent. Then I saw the transactions. Cherry Creek Events, Denver DJ Agency, Glam Studio. The same things tied to my mother's text asking for 200 for Avery. I called the number on the statement, my voice shaking but steady. "This is Camilla Reed. I need to report identity theft." The woman on the line confirmed my information, then paused and said, "This account was opened in person at our Littleton branch last month with a co-applicant named Linda M. Reed." My mother. The world felt still for a moment. I thanked her, ended the call, and opened the voice recorder. Colorado allowed one-party consent, and I needed the truth in her own words. I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the 3rd ring, sounding sharp. "So you are alive." "Mom," I said quietly, 2 credit cards were opened under my name using your address. Do you want to explain that?" She laughed, a rehearsed empty sound, saying, "I was helping you build credit. You should be grateful and pay for your sister's Sweet 16. Stop being dramatic. It is family money. What is yours is ours." No, I said softly. What is mine, and what you did is already under investigation. The silence on the phone turned heavy. Then she snapped. You would not dare. I already did, I replied, and hung up, saving the recording, labeling it Boundaries. Later that day, I agreed to meet them at a diner in Highlands Ranch, neutral ground, the kind of place where no one could shout without an audience. They arrived late, Mom in sunglasses, Dad following, Avery glued to her phone. I told them we were not here to eat. We were here to talk. I slid a folder across the table. 2 cards opened under my name, used for Avery's party. Mom forced a smile, saying she was helping me and that I was ungrateful. She tried to rewrite history, claiming she paid for my education. I laughed, quietly reminding her I worked every shift, every loan, while she used my college fund for Avery's prom dress. Avery muttered, "Here we go again." I told her the silver dress she danced in came from a card in my name. Mom snapped at me, telling me not to speak to her that way. Dad tried to smooth things over, saying we could fix this privately. I pushed the folder closer, telling him the bank already knew the truth. Mom stiffened, her face draining of color. You reported us? Yes, I said. They have your signature, your number, your address. She whispered, You will regret this. No, I said calmly. You did this to yourself. I left money for my coffee and walked out before any of them could answer. That night, while Denver glittered under purple lights, Avery's Sweet 16 was in full swing. I was not invited, but I already knew how the evening would unfold. Around 8:45, my phone rang. An unknown number. A calm voice introduced herself as Lauren Stein from Capital One. She said my fraud report had been escalated, and their internal team was coordinating with local law enforcement to verify the transactions at Cherry Creek events. She said I did not need to be present, just that they would document everything. I thanked her and hung up. The window beside me was open, and I could hear faint music drifting from downtown. A party built on my stolen name, slowly tilting toward truth. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Avery. Are you insane? The police just showed up. The DJ stopped. Everyone is staring. Mom is losing it. Another message followed. They are saying her name. The bank guy said your name. What did you do? I did not respond. I did not have to. Across the city, 2 officers stepped into the glowing ballroom. No sirens, just quiet authority cutting through the neon haze. A banker followed, carrying a folder thick with receipts. The officers stated they were there to verify a report of credit card fraud connected to charges made under the name Camilla Reed. The crowd murmured. Cameras lifted. My mother froze near the cake table, her face draining of color, insisting it had to be a mistake. The banker opened the folder, reading aloud. Primary applicant, Linda M. Reed. Co-applicant, unauthorized. The records show misuse of another person's identity. People gasped. Someone whispered, Isn't that her daughter's name? Avery stood in the center of the room, tears gathering as she whispered, Mom, what did you do? The officer stayed calm, saying no one would be arrested that night, but they needed documentation for the case. They collected receipts and ID verification while the room filled with whispers and pity. Within minutes, the DJ unplugged his equipment. The silver and purple decorations drooped under the heavy air. The banner saying Avery Sweet 16, Born to Shine, sagged as if it understood the irony. Guests drifted out in small, uncomfortable waves. By the time my mother stepped outside, rain had begun to fall, slow, relentless. Back in my apartment, I stood by the window watching lightning flicker above the city. I did not smile. I did not celebrate. I simply let the quiet settle around me. The sound of justice was subtle, steady, and final. For years, I thought silence meant weakness. That night, I realized silence meant I had finally taken my power back. 3 days later, the storm had faded, but the fallout stayed. An email arrived from Capital One saying the investigation was resolved. The message stated that Linda M. Reed had acknowledged the unauthorized use and agreed to repay the charges in full. One short line. No apology, no drama, just the truth laid out clearly at last. Word traveled fast. In a suburb like Littleton, gossip moved quicker than justice. People whispered in grocery aisles and church hallways. Did you hear about the Reeds? Something happened with a bank and the Sweet 16 party. A short video from the event, showing police walking in and guests staring, hit hundreds of thousands of views before Avery locked down all her accounts. My father received a quiet warning at work for letting their mail and financial documents go to his office address. For once, I did not feel guilty. I did not owe them explanations or apologies anymore. I was simply tired. I filled out the FTC forms, froze my credit, and closed every account my mother ever touched. Then I printed the final confirmation letter and pinned it on my wall next to my diploma and the receipt from the locksmith. 3 pieces of paper side by side. Proof of the work I did, proof of the boundaries I built, proof of the freedom I claimed. That night, I brewed tea, opened the window, and let the cool Denver air drift into the apartment. The city hummed below, distant and alive. For the first time, the silence around me did not feel like something sharp pressing into my ribs. It felt like something soft and healing. 6 months passed and autumn settled over Denver. The trees turned gold, the air crisp and forgiving. I had started a new job at Nova Data Labs, surrounded by people who appreciated me for what I created, not for what they could take from me. On my wall hung 3 things: my diploma, my new employee badge, and the old lock I once replaced. Together, they told a single story. The story of how I finally chose myself after years of being chosen last. If you have ever had to set a boundary just to breathe again, you are not alone. Tell me where you are watching from, so I know how many of us finally turned the key and changed the lock. People kept asking me what really happened, how a celebration became a warning, and how a family secret unraveled in front of strangers. So I finally decided to tell it plainly, not to shame anyone, but to make the truth simple enough for anyone to see. It began with small things, tiny cracks that looked harmless at first. My mother's voice asking for a small loan, my father handing over documents saying it was just for safety, and me trusting because children are taught that trust is what holds a home together. But trust without honesty is only a shadow shaped like comfort. When the police walked into that birthday party, it was not about the money. It was not about the credit card or the charges. It was the moment a decade of silence broke open. Everyone watching thought they saw drama, but what they really saw was the cost of pretending everything was fine. After the investigation ended, I sat alone one evening thinking about the whole story, from the first time my mother used my name for something I never agreed to the night I changed the locks, the message from Capital One, the whispers, the stares, the shame that was never even mine. The truth was simple. I had learned how to save myself in a house that never learned how to protect me. People think healing is loud, but mine was quiet. It hid in frozen credit reports, long walks back to my apartment, and learning the weight of a door that only opened when I wanted it to. I realized the story was never about anger. It was about choosing a life where I did not have to look over my shoulder to see who was following my name. Now, when someone asks what really happened, I tell them this: nothing exploded. Everything simply revealed itself, one small truth after another, like lights turning on in a long, dark hallway. And once the hallway was lit, there was only one direction left to walk: forward. If you are listening to this and you have lived in a house where the quiet felt heavier than any argument, then you already understand my story more than anyone else. After that night, the city slowly shifted, but the biggest change was inside me. My small apartment with its early morning light didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like a place I chose for myself, a place no one could walk into and take from me. I wasn't the same girl who lived her life apologizing for existing. I wasn't someone waiting for approval. I was finally the one holding the pen to my own story. When the final letter from the bank arrived, I opened it without shaking, the way I once would have. The words were simple: case closed, unauthorized use admitted, repayment confirmed. But to me, it felt like the first breath after being underwater too long. I placed the letter on my desk beside the police report, the credit-free confirmation, and the locksmith receipt. Each page like a quiet medal from battles no one ever saw, but I fought anyway. That afternoon, I sat by the open window, warm sunlight spilling across the floor, the city humming faintly below. Nothing felt threatening. Not my phone, not the silence, not even the future. Everything was calm, almost impossibly calm. My mother never called, my father never reached out, Avery stayed silent. The whole world seemed to understand that I wasn't returning to the version of myself who lived on demand. Weeks passed and my job at Know the Data Labs started to feel steady, real. My coworkers respected me because of my work, not what I could give them, not what they could take from me. They didn't guilt me, they didn't drain me, they didn't treat my love or time or money like something they deserved just for showing up. I realized, maybe for the first time, that respect isn't begged for, it's lived in. One evening driving home, I suddenly noticed something. I hadn't cried in weeks, not from anger, not from sadness, not from fear. I was breathing freely for the first time, maybe ever. When I walked into my apartment, I stood in front of the 3 things on my wall: my diploma, my new work badge, and the old lock I once replaced. I finally understood they weren't decorations. They were the timeline of my freedom. Later that night, I made tea and stood by the window, the lights of Denver glittering like hundreds of tiny new beginnings. And it hit me. This story was never about revenge. It wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about choosing myself, protecting my name, rebuilding the parts of me that were never given a chance to grow. People think silence means weakness, but they're wrong. The right kind of silence is strength. It's healing. It's reclaiming every inch of ground you lost. In the end, I'm still the same girl, just one who finally holds her own key. And if you've ever had to draw a boundary just to be able to breathe, know this: you're not alone. Many of us have changed the locks. Many of us have rebuilt from scratch. Many of us have learned that freedom often starts with one quiet decision. And sometimes, the quietest ending is the loudest beginning ever. Yours, fully and finally free.